talk about a case history. I think it's going to be a bit of a kind of moderated session. We're going to go through a case history around content development and successful marketing. Is that fair? All right, let's do it. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you got it.
Hi, everybody. So that was great to see. The previous session really did tee up a few of the themes that we've been talking about in prepping for this, and so apropos and great sort of setup. So I'm Andy Marks. I'm managing director of Matter, which is the entertainment and sports unit of Edelman. We do a lot of content creation, so happy to be here with you today and over the last couple of days. With me is Patricia Galea, who is SVP Los Angeles Group Director of Edelman Digital. And you already heard Jonathan mentioned. Jonathan Anastas, who is VP Global Marketing, Head of Digital and Social at Activision. Topic of our session is brands as content creators, and in a bit of a unique twist, we're going to take you through a case study which is literally in the process of forming, because the program launched only about 10 days ago. So you're going to get a little bit of an inside look at how this is evolving, and we're going to share with you some of the early results. But first I wanted to just I think there's a clicker somewhere to drive the slides. This must be it. There you go. Okay. So first what I wanted to do, and over the last couple of days we've been hearing a lot of stats in various forums, but to help frame up the discussion, I thought it would be useful. Look, I mean, first is that video consumption continues to accelerate. That's why we're all here, Videonomics. According to YouTube, as of this past May, I think we've already shared the statistic, approximately 100 hours of video is uploaded to the platform every minute, up from 65 hours a year ago, and over 6 billion hours of video are watched each month, which is an increase of 50% over last year. So a ton of clutter, as was already mentioned. And according to Oyala study, mobile and tablets account for 10% of global online video plays, up from 4% in 2012. So we're operating, obviously, in a truly multi-screen ecosystem. Social TV, content sharing, we are, according to Nielsen, US 77% watch TV and internet simultaneously. 44% of total tablet usage is while watching TV. And from a social sharing standpoint, 500 years of YouTube videos are watched on Facebook each day, and 700 videos are shared via Twitter every minute. So people are sharing. It's very social, and that's sort of here to stay, and it's an intrinsic part of this whole process. And the smart brands are becoming content creators. The smart brands who are paying attention to some of what the previous session talked about, we did our own study, Matter and Edelman, over the last 7 years. We've done a global entertainment survey. Nearly half of those surveyed expect to be entertained by brands, according to our findings. And brands are as influential with consumers as professional critics when they make their entertainment choices. 56% saying that they consume entertainment based on recommendations from a brand or product they like. So a tremendous opportunity for brands to approach it strategically and to deliver compelling, entertaining content to audiences. Going to the gaming space in particular, which is highly relevant to what we're here to talk about today. Google just released the findings of their study on YouTube, specifically focused on gamers. And gamers love watching game video content. No surprise there, Machinima has created a lot of success around that notion. 95% of gamers turn to online video for entertainment and information in moments that matter to them. The amount of time people spent watching gaming videos on YouTube more than doubled year over year in 2012. The growth rate of time spent viewing gaming videos is greater than YouTube's overall growth in the US during that time. Game views from subscribers jumped 9 times year over year, and those who were subscribers watched game content for twice as long as non-subscribers. So again, that notion of subscribers driving deeper engagement, an important component of any YouTube strategy, which comes to what we're here to talk about today. So it's key for us to find a way to engage audiences, sustain that engagement over time. One final statistic. When looking at the share of total console game views from pre-launch of a game to post-launch of a new game, the majority of game video views pre-launch are those produced by the brand versus post-launch when the community takes over. There's this sort of virtual community-based sort of drive to create content. So that's also, again, as the brand delivering videos in the sort of upfront of that dynamic, how do we sustain engagement over time? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So the case we're talking you through is Skylanders Boomcast, which is a YouTube series targeted at young gamers. It's hosted by Zachary Gordon, who, for those of you who don't know who that is, he's the star of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies. And as I mentioned, we're going to give you a sneak peek at the strategy and approach, how we're measuring results, and the key learnings at this early stage. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, who's going to take you through the Skylanders franchise, and we'll go from there.
So hopefully all of you who are out there who are parents know what Skylanders is, right? Hopefully you're buying lots and lots of this stuff. Skylanders, this concept that we created of sort of like bringing toys to life inside video games, has become a $1.5 billion franchise from nothing over the last 2 years. So it's really become a big cultural phenomenon among 6 to 11-year-olds. The primary touch point with the franchise is the game itself, and the center of that is the console. Sort of tertiary around that is the characters, which are smart characters. They have a little chip inside them which allows them to learn and carry that learning from game to game. And the average Skylanders player ends up buying 10 characters per game, per console game. So even the toys themselves become a big talking point and a big sociability point. And then we've extended that experience into mobile games. We currently have 3 mobile extensions out there in the world. So if the primary experience is amongst the game, we use social and the website to extend and amplify the conversation. And also, we have this thing inside Activision we call fueling the hunt, which is like we put these limited characters out, and there's limited things you can only get at Target, and limited things you can only get at Walmart, and things around Halloween or all different holidays. And we use our digital channels to sort of fuel that hunt and give people tips as to where those things are. So that's kind of like the big overview of the franchise. In terms of what our business drivers were for creating a webisode, our YouTube strategy for the last couple of years has basically been a fairly traditional brand one of, like a lot of game publishers, taking trailers, gameplay-based trailers, live-action TV commercials, putting them online, sort of curating them around a channel. And it did pretty well. We probably got up to, say, roughly 60 million views using the traditional model. However, in the last year, we've really seen the start of a sea change in, we think, how kids consume media. There's been a ton of press, obviously, on what's happening to sort of traditional kids' TV ratings. And, is that because of Netflix? Is that because of just the programming themselves isn't that good and it's going to come back next season if the programming's better? We're also seeing like a big shift towards tablet interaction with and smartphone interaction with our franchises, both on the websites. You mentioned a statistic of, what was it, 10% of like global videos. We're seeing multiples of that, like not even percentage increases, but like, so for a kid's title, it went from like 8 to 25% in like 9 months' time. With our more mature franchises, it's gone to like 40, 45% in like 18 months' time. So this radical shift towards, consuming video stuff on other platforms. And so then when we really dug into it, it's, YouTube has become the primary destination for our key audience, right? For kids 6 to 11. So we need to be where they are. So that's kind of like why we're focusing there, but why not just keep doing what we were doing, right? Why not just keep putting gameplay trailers up? Well, we look at how the YouTube ecosystem functions a lot, and it's always changing, and we've really seen that how they treat the idea of subscribers is becoming increasingly important to future views and sort of your channel health. And so we made a very precise decision to create content that would actually create subscribers first and sort of viewers second, as opposed to viewers first and subscribers second, which is the way most of our traditional content works. And we sort of felt that we were kind of under-subscribered relative to our views. When we started looking at the ratio of like 60 million views to 40,000 subscribers, we felt like that wasn't the right ratio for future health, and we felt that it wouldn't drive future views. And so we really wanted to create a series around like something like regular content that would drive subscribers.
Yeah, so we're going to take a look at a clip from the series which just launched. So roll video, and then Patricia's going to pick it up from here.
Greetings, Internet humans. Welcome to Skylanders Boomcast, a brand spanking new web series where each week I'll bring you the most happening news about the Skylanders world. I'm Zach, and I have the most awesome job in the world. Every week, I will bring you the hottest breaking news from my inside sources and show off some fantastic Skylanders art submitted by you. New videos will post every week on the official Skylanders YouTube channel, so you can click the subscribe button and watch every new episode.
Great, so I'll take you through the approach in creating this. That was just a clip. Each episode, weekly episode, is about 4 to 5 minutes long. I think to be successful on YouTube, we've heard this in the last panel, but it's really important to bring together a diverse set of skills and talents. And it's so true that you just can't take a TV network model and put it on YouTube. I came from a TV network over at Disney Channel prior to working at Edelman Digital, and I've seen how the Disneys of the world try to do that, and they really don't succeed. So it was really important for the success of this to take a lot of different things. One is understanding what kids want, what content they consume, and to what Jonathan was saying, YouTube is the #1 destination for kids online. So starting there, with what kids want, what gamers want, knowing what then news and content, how to segment each episode that drives not only views, but ultimately drives subs or subscriptions, that was super key for us. Having talent skills in terms of identifying and negotiating talent with bringing Zach, that was a huge decision in terms of who was going to host the show, making sure that that talent sort of works for the brand, works for engaging the audience. And then I'd say also having a really strong understanding of two things. One is digital marketing overall, because the success of this show is hugely dependent upon what's happening inside of YouTube. So we have to know how YouTube operates and really, really working with those levers inside of YouTube. But then I'd say also around the social communities around this game, around other things that Activision is doing with the audience. And so we also our agency manages the social communities for Activision. So we have a really good understanding of what that particular Activision or Skylanders community really wants. And we're also able to make this a very fan-driven experience, meaning designing the content ground up from what fans want. And each segment of the show also celebrates fans in terms of some of the content that they create around their love of Skylanders. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Oh,
so, and I kind of mentioned this, but I think the previous panel really hit this home, but you have to really understand YouTube in terms of focusing on how to build your audience. It's not just about just getting a bunch of views on a particular video, but it's really first and foremost to what Jonathan said and others have said today, build that audience. So the way the content's designed, the way it's distributed, it's all about making sure you're building that audience, because the research, as we just saw that Andy presented, most of your eventual views are going to come, and consumption of your videos is going to come from your subs, not from just random people searching for that video. And then in terms of how we define success, I'd say it's really, it is the subs that we look at ultimately. Of course, we're going to look at views. Those are important. And, we want to make sure we also are looking at click-throughs from some of the paid promotion we're doing and other things. So some of the results to date, again, this has been up for 10 days. We've had 2 episodes launch. So they each launch on Fridays. We've had 53,000 YouTube subscribers, and that's 17% increase, which sounds great. It is great. But I think put it another way, we were getting about 150 subscribers a day on the channel, and now we're at 800. So 800 per day are subscribing versus 150. So it's a 5-fold increase, which is pretty dramatic, and we expect that to continue. We're at about 300,000 combined views between the 2 episodes thus far. And I think that the huge story here is that views are great, subs are great, but what we're really seeing is a really high engagement level with the content. And so you can't sort of buy or game your way into getting great engagement. One of the tactics we use is that literally in each video, Zach will ask the audience to give feedback through commenting. And so it's just a simple thing, but not only is the content designed to elicit or trigger feedback, but he actually has these specific messages out to these kids to give feedback on the characters, the gameplay, what have you. So that's been a really, really successful tactic in terms of getting a lot of engagement. And it's all been overwhelmingly positive as well. I think that's it. You want to go through learnings?
Sure. So, anything, of course, can get better. Like, if you go back to that last slide, I'm going to make the bold prediction that we're going to end up at over 100,000 subscribers and pick up about 4 million views. Looking at the math, that's my guess, just looking at how our sort of view math machine has worked. But things can always get better. So if we sort of pop to the next slide and talk about like what we're already doing to kind of make the show a better thing. What happened to our little machine? So, we really dive into the metrics of all this stuff. Like, I think we've got a super good understanding of the levers. We're going to make each video shorter a little bit. We're looking at sort of like completion rates versus best practices, and we're going to try to tighten them up by a minute or so. We really think we want to add like insider baseball stuff. Like if you look at sort of the social feedback, like people want to know more like the inside dirt, like the tricks in the characters or tips of how to get through pieces of the game. So we're going to do a lot more of that stuff. More focus on the characters themselves because they're such a driver. We're going to show slightly less host. He's getting generally really good feedback, and it's funny, I'll sort of give you a little bit of inside baseball. You talked earlier about the shared skills. I think we had what was like a really healthy debate. Like we had a very healthy debate about talent. I want to give a shout out. Rob Jones is on our team. Where is he out there? So he's kind of our ringer. Like Edelman hired him from Machinima. And, I'd say I'm a fairly tough cookie, right, as clients come.
Just a little bit.
Rob is like, he's a category expert, like a super subject matter expert. And so we had a really healthy debate where he's like created all this great content for Machinima, and a debate about like, I'm sure he had the formula for how we would have gotten the most subscribers and the most views, but our brand also has to stand for something.
Right.
And so I think there was a really healthy tension between what's sort of best for our brand tone and our brand behavior and long term and the other things, and what would get us the maximum number of views, the maximum number of subscribers. And we had to sort of find this midpoint that would be sort of mathematically successful, but also wouldn't take our brand into a place that you wouldn't want to go to.
Then you have the layer of this being a kids audience, kids brand. So then you've got all of, whole nother layer of complexity and caution and risk, frankly, in terms of you don't want to have a host that maybe has done something in the past or some kind of created content in the past that maybe parents aren't going to be particularly comfortable with. So it was like impossible to find this unicorn, right?
And I think we did.
But I think we did.
I think if you look at like the social conversation around him, it's been good.
Yeah.
Like, there was some skepticism, from those who really came from the MCN world that like he's not from this world and doesn't bring a social following, and there was math around that certainly.
Yeah.
But he brings some sort of a different following, right? He's got a movie based on a bunch of successful books. And tonality is super important to us, and it was really important to us that like he had an earnesty that like some of the more gaming-focused hosts didn't have. Like we
Right.
always sort of say, we're Pixar, not Hasbro, you know, when we sort of think of our brand, and it's like where you sort of end up in that space.
Yeah,
and I
also-
think this was like one of these places where like it was a really healthy sort of like
Yeah.
debate where sort of like out of the burnishing, the best outcome came.
Because it's looking at all, you have all these variables to play with in terms of knowing what's going to move the needle, right? In terms of getting this content to be engaged with, you know, drive views, drive subscriptions. And so the host is one component, you know, then you've got all these other variables in terms of like, okay, what is the content? How's it broken out? What's the length, format? And then how do you get that distributed? But so when we had this spirited debate back and forth around which hosts we're going to have, then there were trade-offs. I mean, there's certainly huge advantages to going with Zach in terms of, I think, also being able to cultivate a host, right? But a host that's already has some, you know, some credibility in Hollywood.
Recognition, yeah.
Exactly. But, you know, within YouTube, really an unknown doesn't have a huge footprint. So we sort of looked at it big picture and long term, which I think is a really smart move because, and I credit Jonathan and his team because we were just looking at this hyper sort of focus to the metrics and what can we do to ensure success, just knowing the formula we had to, you know, work with. But I think they were really smart from a brand perspective to say, let's make sure this is obviously does well, but that we're looking at it from sort of a long-term, big picture brand perspective to make sure we're not winning, sort of being myopic about winning in the metrics, but then losing in sort of a brand way.
Yeah, and I think that sustained approach overall for, you know, if we're talking sort of globally, if you will, about branded content, how to do it right, it isn't the one and done that generally wins out in the end. It's a strategic thought process, takes some, you know, time and some courage that you're taking the long view and you're thinking, how am I going to repeatedly come back to my audience with new content? If you think in those terms, then, you know, decisions like this come about, I think maybe a little bit more organically.
And somebody on the last panel mentioned sort of cross-platform. We managed to have that with Zach, where he's the host of the show. We did 2 broadcast integrations with him around sort of commercial stuff on traditional kids networks, including, ironically, Disney Channel. Somehow we pulled that off, right?
Yep.
And then he also hosted our PR event in Times Square, of which then we immediately cut video and shoved it into the next week's episode the next day.
We were going to show that. Somehow
Yeah.
the wrong video ended
That's
up
all
on. But yeah, the one final thing, too, is that the brand stands for something. In other words, and so we had to be careful, similar to the way that we were talking about the talent, the YouTube native talent that we might have brought on versus Zach. So we made some trade-offs there, but also with production values. I think, you know, that's something that in the YouTube environment, sort of that scrappy feeling, you know, immediacy, had to be balanced against
Totally.
what Activision is known for, which is, you know, in some cases, Hollywood style, Hollywood budget, Hollywood scale, production values. So balancing that as well, I think, was an important issue, kind of to the final point there. So that's, unless anybody has anything else to share, that's our case study.
Our work in progress case study.
Our work in progress. We'll report back at some point in the not too distant future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys are done.
Okay.
Congratulations. That was amazing. Thank you so much.